Hey there, fellow sea glass lovers. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm Jackie, and my inspiration for today's art project is this photo I took of my granddaughter looking out over the water. I just find it so peaceful looking at her staring out at the horizon. And she's got her dog there with her, which is really good for companionship. So the frame I'm using for this mosaic is 12.5 inches by 15.5 inches in the glass. So I did a sketch of my granddaughter and her dog and a lighthouse off in the distance, and I'm going to do the sky and the water. I'm really excited about this one. Now, the thing that I wanted to think about is that my granddaughter is crazy about purple, and I'd love to use purple sea glass for the hat and her top and her boots. However, I don't know about where you are, but where I do my sea glass hunting, I don't get a whole lot of purple sea glass. So I'm going to do something I don't typically do with my mosaics to create some purple sea glass. So I'm a bit of a purist when it comes to my art. I'll only use materials that I get at the beach. I don't just use sea glass, I also use a lot of other beach treasures and sometimes some driftwood, but it's only stuff that comes from the beach. So for me to be painting my sea glass in order to get enough purple sea glass to do this part of the mosaic is fairly rare. This is an example of how you can be quite indulgent as a grandparent. I'll even change my method. So what I'm planning to do, I have some dark purple and some light purple, and I just have the pieces of sea glass arranged to make the hat and the shirt and the boots. I'm using white sea glass and just doing some painting on the back. I don't like to paint the front because then you lose the frostiness of the sea glass, but if you paint the back and then flip it over, then it's going to show the purple hue through the sea glass, especially when the sun's shining through it. So I'm going to do this. I'll flip them over, still keep them in place so I don't lose my design. And I'll wait for it to dry before I attach it into my mosaic. Now I'm going to use dark purple, except I'm going to use the light purple for a strip in the hat and for the strips in the boots as well. So this only takes a tiny bit of paint, doesn't take very long to do. It is definitely taking away from the authenticity of the sea glass because you're faking the color a bit. But my granddaughter will appreciate because she loves her purple clothes. So I'm going to leave this to dry for a bit. Even though it's acrylic paint, it dries fairly quickly. But I'm going to make sure that it's really well set before I flip them over and start to glue them into my mosaic. So I have to walk away from this for a bit and take a break. Now, once you flip them over, you might decide that the color isn't dark enough. If you try this technique at home, it's up to you how deep you want your color. So if you flip this over and you're like, oh, that's not really very bright or whatever, just do another coat. And you can have it as deep or as light as you like. So after the paint dried, I flipped all of the sea glass pieces back over and made sure they were all arranged in the right position. Now I'm going to use my Quick Seal Kitchen and Bath adhesive caulk to glue the pieces into my mosaic. Just one tip I would give you on doing this painting like that. When I arrange the pieces of sea glass on my little pattern here, then when you go to paint them, you move them at a place and it can be hard to get them sorted back into the exact same place. So just a tip that helped me on that, I took a picture of my arrangement before I started moving my sea glass pieces out of place, and it was invaluable because I went to put them back together and I couldn't find the right place to put everything. So now to glue all of my purple sea glass into my mosaic. So now you can see how the purple paint on the other side just shines through, but because the top of the sea glass isn't painted, it still has that frosty sea glass look. So it does look like an authentic piece of purple sea glass, but it's not. To me, it doesn't look terribly authentic because of the fact that I know that I don't get this much purple sea glass in nature, and when I do get it, it's not usually this purple. But doing sea glass art's all about fun, and this is fun, so I'm going for it. And then I used brown to fill in her face and her hand. Now, although I don't get a whole lot of purple, I do get some, so I do want to put one authentic piece of purple in there as the base of a sailboat that I'm going to put out in the water here. And I'm going to use some other real sea glass colors as well. I have a yellow piece that I want to use for the light up in the lighthouse. And I have a couple of red pieces that I'm going to use for the roof of the lighthouse. These red pieces are not well finished pieces. They're kind of rough, but they came from the beach, so they meet my criteria. If it comes from the beach, I can use it in my sea glass mosaics. And then I'm going to use some blue. I'm going to put a blue peak on the lighthouse. I'm going to put this ridge here on the lighthouse blue, and I'm going to put some blue birds up in the sky. I love using birds in the sky, and because this sky is going to be white, and when you do a white sky and you use that nice beautiful cobalt blue for some birds flying in the sky, it's very effective. And I'm also going to use a few sea foam colored pieces. I picked out a few of my really round jelly beanie type that I'm going to use for flower centers, because I'm going to have 3 flowers coming out here they're going to be sort of showing as growing out of the cape. So it does add some other colors of sea glass, and to get some more purple in there, I'm going to put in a few of my purple shells. These shells are so beautiful. Whenever I see one on the beach, I can't leave it. And that adds my purple. Now, other special pieces I'm going to use, sea pottery. I picked out 4 square-ish pieces of sea pottery for my windows in my lighthouse. Then I'll fill in the rest of the lighthouse with white. And I'm going to put a piece of driftwood. Doesn't all have to be sea glass. I like using driftwood sometimes. And I'm going to put 2 inukshuks sitting on the piece of driftwood. And this is going to be like the little girl's mom and dad sitting there watching her play. I have to tell you a story about my daughter. She's very protective, and in real life, she's my granddaughter's mother, and in real life she would never sit very far from her if she was near the edge of the cape at the beach. But this is just a fanciful piece, so then her mom and dad sitting back away from her while she's looking out over the water is okay. There, so that gives me some other, and then I wanted to put a few sea pottery pieces up in the sky as well for clouds. And then I'm going to use some stones, some big pebbles or rocks down on the down at the base just to ground the piece. I'm going to set a few of these here for now, and then I'll decide which ones I want to include. I have to include a hagstone, which is a rock with a hole in it, because it's always a good sign of good luck. And then I'm going to use a whole bunch of tiny little pebbles, whoops, off in the distance at the base of the lighthouse. And then the rest of the piece will be filled in with white and green and brown, which are my 3 colors of sea glass that I had tons of. So if you want to see me put the rest of this piece together, I'll do a time-lapse video as I'm finishing off my mosaic and gluing everything in place. And if you just want to see the final view, then just fast forward to the end.